So a warm welcome to you all today on the Janal Talks at the Kerala Museum, and today's talk is online. A little bit about the Janal project to begin with. The Kerala Museum was established in Kochi in 1987 by R. Madhavan Nair, who founded the museum to provide learning opportunities for young and lifelong learners in history, the fine arts, and the performing arts. In 2022, marking its 35th year, the museum launched the Janal Digital Archives, a program that develops digital exhibitions on historical archives and community histories from Kerala. This Janal Talks lecture series forms part of the program, and it offers public conversations on Kerala's past, present, and future. Supported by the Geojit Foundation, it fulfills the museum's mission of making history accessible to all. Since its inception in 2022, Janal Talks has created a platform for scholars, practitioners, thought leaders, and audiences to come together to connect with evolving stories of Kerala's plural histories, society, culture, politics, and environment. We extend a heartfelt thanks to our sponsors, to our collaborators like yourselves, and the entire Kerala Museum community for making Janal Talks a space where knowledge, inquiry, and public dialogue flourish. The current season 3 continues the approach and shifts focus to reflecting on how landscapes, trade, and everyday lives have influenced Kerala's collective memory and identity. At the first lecture of this season, Pepper, Landscape and Memory, Dr. Pius Malikandathil examined how the spice trade shaped Kerala's environment and social fabric, reminding us that physical landscapes are also repositories of memory and meaning shaped by interaction, aspiration, and change. Season 3 is inspired by the photographs gifted to the Janal Archive by Kerala scholar Lesley Jeffrey, our speaker for today, author of The Decline of Nair Dominance, and these are still photographs of Kerala from his travels in the early 1980s. Robin first arrived in Kerala from 1967 to 69, living here as an English teacher in a government school in Chandigarh. First arrived in India, sorry. He first visited Kerala in December 1967, and a lifelong fascination began, which generated 2 books about Kerala. He taught politics and history in 2 Australian universities, and he now lives in Melbourne and is a citizen of Australia and Canada. About today's talk, in 1983, Robin Jeffrey and his wife Lesley Jeffrey, with their newly purchased Nikon camera and their driver Gopi, spent 10 days traveling from Kanyakumari to Kochi, photographing old Kerala buildings. Fascinated by the Nair Taravad diorama in the Napier Museum in 1971, Jeffrey wanted to see such houses before they disappeared. And the Gulf boom just happening when remittances were transforming Kerala and old buildings were being torn down. They captured 400 black and white photographs. This talk, the second of a 2-part series, takes a more extensive look at Jeffrey's photographs of Kerala in the 1980s and engages 3 expert panelists in dialogue. To see more of the broad overview, you can see our first Zoom recording, and both of these recordings will be up on our YouTube channel shortly. About our panelists for the day, we are lucky to have with us Professor Ramaswamy Natesh, who is a professor and conservation architect at TKM College of Engineering, with over 2 decades of experience in the architecture field and conservation field. He serves as an expert committee member of the Kerala State Art and Heritage Commission, chairman of the Kollam Sub-Center, and co-convener of Intact Kollam chapter. Professor Ramaswamy has traveled widely, delivering lectures across India and abroad, and has coordinated 3 heritage summer schools for training teachers and professionals. He was also part of the Rotary International GSE team that visited Germany, Paris, and South America. With extensive experience as an architectural and heritage conservation consultant, he has worked on projects such as the Tanjavur Palace restoration, the David Hall restoration, and the Tripundra Heritage Zone. He has also worked with Susparsha, reviving built heritage. Among his many recognitions is the Inside Outside Magazine National Commendation Award for Conservation and Revitalization. Welcome to you, sir. About our next panelist for the day, Professor Sharat Sunder. He's a conservation architect with a B.Arch from College of Engineering, Trivandrum, that's CET, an M.Arch from the School of Planning and Architecture in New Delhi. And he joined the RIT Department of Architecture, Pampadi, as assistant professor in 2014 and currently occupies the same post at CET. He is involved in research on the vernacular, traditional architecture history of Kerala and is the author of The King's Craftsman, a book which documents the history of the extinct craft of ivory carving in Kerala. He is also a contributing writer of The Hindu and writes on history, art, architectural and cultural heritage. Welcome you, Sharat. Rakhi Mariam Johnson is no stranger to Kerala Museum. She has already spoken once at the Janal talks. She is a conservation architect and an academician. She heads City Futures Design Collaborative, a multifaceted architecture firm in Ernakulam. She did her B.Arch from TKM College of Engineering and pursued her M.Arch in conservation from School of Planning and Architecture in New Delhi. She has been involved in many cultural heritage studies, particularly historic churches of Kerala, and has published many articles and papers on heritage studies. She is the lead conservation architect for the Tirvanur Heritage Project by Tourism Department in Calicut. She was the consultant conservation architect for the documentary on Kadthurthi Church. She was the lead researcher on Erupana St. Raphael's Church study by Intact Kochi. And she has led multiple built heritage documentation studios at KMEA College of Architecture, where she is visiting faculty. She was the lead conservation architect for many adaptive reuse projects, including the, Rakhi always giving me very hard words to pronounce, but I will try. Tampurampadi Palace, is that correct? Yes, Indo-Portuguese bungalow at Kollam and several other residencies. She has been involved with ICOMOS India and has been part of its many heritage-related activities. Welcome to you, Rakhi. Thank you, three of our panelists, for joining us at such short notice also, and for being such great collaborators so far. And we're looking forward to hearing from all of you once we are done with an intro into a sneak peek into Robin's slides. We will be going back to the slides to discuss them in further detail. So Robin's going to take us quickly through them to begin with, and then we will head back to them after he does that. So Robin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Aditi. My role is really to try to whet your appetite for looking at the slides and to make it known to viewers, whoever may see this presentation, that this archive is now available or will be available from the Kerala Museum. It came about because my wife and I had been coming back and forth to Kerala for a number of years. And as we saw the beautiful buildings disappearing to a certain extent and their contents ending up in antique shops or indeed being thrown into the rubbish, we wanted to have the thought were beautiful and thought were valuable and interesting. And we were working on the notion that if we went up and down Kerala for 10 days and took pictures of everything we didn't understand and took a picture of it, we might eventually find someone who could explain it to us. So it was very much a voyage of a journey of discovery. The Kerala Museum has done a great thing, I think, by lining up such a splendid panel, and they're ideally qualified to answer questions that the photos may pose, and also comment on aspects of the old Kerala and the way things have changed since 1983. Let me launch then quickly into what I'm going to do is a very quick tour of about 30, 35 of the photos of the 400 in the collection. And we've broken them into some categories just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that the photos touch on. So if we move on now, and if our floor production person could give us the next slide, that would be very good. So the first category is houses. And of course, the old houses of Kerala were particularly interesting, particularly the Taravad houses of higher caste Hindus, particularly Nairs. Could we have number 3, please, the next one? This is the Elankat house in Nanjanad. And I like it because it seems to me almost a perfect example of the way things might have looked long, long ago. Could we have number 4? This is a Syrian Christian house, a slightly different style in Kuruvillangad in central Kerala. The house was built in the 1880s, 1890s, and I think perhaps shows influences of the European effect on Christianity in Kerala. But in both of these houses, you'll see this amazing woodwork, and inside them the fittings, wonderful fittings on doors and walls made of brass or other metals. Could we have the next slide, please? This was what we were seeing around us increasingly in 1983, a Gulf house with lots of concrete and flat roofs, and the spirit of the Public Works Department passing through it, perhaps. Could we have the next slide, please? The fascination for me, I was very interested in matrilineal, Manamakatayam, the practice of descent through the female line. And the Nalakettu houses were often pointed out to me as being as typifying the sort of Taravad house that many of these families lived in. Could we have the next slide, please? This is, in the days before drones, the people who lived at Roscote Bungalow in Trivandrum had this cardboard vision of their house, Roscote Bungalow, from the air. But what's important is you get the feeling for how a Nalakettu was supposed to work, with an inner courtyard and rooms on all 4 sides leading off the courtyard, and the courtyard open to the sky. Could we have the next slide, please? And this, of course, is the diorama of a Taravad, a Maramakatayam Taravad, in the Napier Museum in Trivandrum. And it's a very idealized and romanticized version, but nevertheless, it's also a work of art. I think it's a beautiful thing and deserves to be probably better exhibited, which I hope it is now, than it was in 1983. Could we have the next slide, please? This is a more elaborate, restored Nalakettu in Tripunatura in Kochi, but you do see the inner courtyard with rooms leading off it. But it's had a considerable renovation, as you can imagine. Next, please. This is the exterior of that house, and again the beautiful working of on the roof, the carving, and so on, and of course the tulsi bush in front of the house. Next, please. This is from the Elambra Code Ilam in Tripunatura. Again, you see the 4-sided, the open top, the roofless top, and the tulsi in the center of the courtyard. Next, please. This is Uchalikal house on the way from Ernakulam to Tripunatura. Again, the 4 sides illustrated, but also in this case, the beautiful brass lamps and the fixtures on the doors. Next, please. This is Todikad house, again, a Nalakettu that has had some renovation by 1983. Todikad house is just, or I hope is still there, behind the Woodlands Hotel off MG Road in Ernakulam. Could we have the next slide, please? What you see here, you've had the look at the woodwork and metalwork, or what is featured in this group. This is a carved lion, a decorative corner beam from the Illumbra Illam in Tripunithura. But again, the lion beautifully done. Next slide, please. I like this one very much. This, I'm told, would have been the Carnarvon's bench, where he would have lazed in the sun, presumably, and out of the rain in the rainy season, supervising the other members of the Taravad, the Carnarvon being the senior male member who was the manager of the old Taravad and Maramakatayam structure. And again, a beautiful piece of woodwork. Could we have the next slide, please? The carving on a temple on the route between Tagari and Alapura. Next slide, please. And metalwork exemplified by some of these beautiful implements, the lamp and the vessel with the wonderful spout. I don't know how these were made, where they were made, and I'm hoping someone can throw light on it. The next, please. Another one of these beautiful lamps. Next, please. Again, this to me is a mystery, because I was told, and this was in an Ambudri household, I was told that that was an earring, and women would have worn it in their ears, and it looks a very heavy piece of metal. Again, the jewelry of old Kerala is a fascination to me, and I know almost nothing about it. Next, please. And this came from the Nadiri house in Kuruvillangad. I think is called a cash counting board. The cash was the smallest coin in the old Travancore and Cochin monetary system, and the easiest way to deal with them, if you had bags of them, was to spread them out across the board, shake it, and they would find their way into the holes, and you'd know how many cash you had. Next, please. So monuments, as we drove around the country, we saw old monuments and new monuments. Could we have next, please? This is a particularly, I think, memorable one. It's the large wooden boat in the Mariam church at Kuruvillangad, which worshippers take out on festive days. And it's supposed, I gather, to represent or to be inspired by the story of Jonah and the whale, who got swallowed by the whale, but whose faith got him out of the whale's gut. Could we, and it's a very large piece of woodwork. The woodwork is remarkable, but also a very heavy thing to carry when it's carried in procession. Next, please. This is Aruvipuram down in the southern districts of Kerala, and Srinarayana Guru's statue. Not a very good photograph, I have to say, but the important thing was the positioning and the location. Next one, please. My favorite, of course, I have to say, is always Sarti, Statue Junction, Madhavarao. I think it's a very fine statue, and such an interesting man, and to have given your name for more than 130 years to a junction, I think is wonderful to be Statue Junction. Next one, please. This is much more contemporary kind of monument to the Punaprab Vayalur insurrection or rebellion of 1946, and next to it on the right, the memorial to P. Krishna Pillai, who was often seen as the father of the Communist Party in Kerala. Next, please. Sir M. Krishnan Nair's gate almost looks like it had come from Delhi as a knockoff from the India Gate. But interesting for a number of reasons, because Krishnan Nair was such an important figure in this period when Maramakatayam was being translated into a different form of inheritance and heritage. Can we have the next one, please? And finally, you can't go to Kerala, I think, without going into bookshops. And this was an ordinary bookshop in Kottayam in 1983 with a number of different gods and heroes to worship, or at least pay homage to. Could we have the next slide, please? People in country, this is kind of random, but interesting people and interesting scenes, or so my wife and I thought. And again, many of these scenes will have changed, I'm sure, over the last 42 years. Could we have the next slide, please? A man cutting a coconut palm at Tonikal outside of Trivandrum. Next one, please. A barefoot man on the road south from Kottayam and very near the Bharat cold storage in the background. Whether Bharat cold storage is still there, I don't know. Next one, please. This one I particularly like because it catches vaguely in the background the Ghats, the vast paddy lands of Palghat district, and then the social relations on the land. The man under the umbrella is the owner or supervisor, and then there are 10 women out with no umbrellas weeding paddy. Could we have the next one, please? Coconuts being prepared to put in the ground, sprouting so that they can be planted and build new trees. Next, please. A toddy shop number 52, I think, at Andikad. Again, on the Cochin side, with naughty posters on the door. Just that sense of sleaze that does go with some toddy shops, particularly in Australia. Could we have the next one, please? And making a headdress for an elephant. Again, the craftspeople at work. This kind of craft was still, as you can see, being practiced in 1983. And finally, could we have the last of these slides? What better way to end than with elephant references and coming up on an elephant from the south when the elephant is going north. And this is on the road near Andikad. So that's a kind of taste of what's among the 400 slides in the archive now. And I'm hoping that maybe some of them will interest the panel, and we could maybe talk about them, or they can explain to me much more about what I was looking at, or indeed throw light on some of the houses and locations that I've been talking about. So may I give the forum back to you now, please, Aditi?
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for that quick run through. Now we're going to pass the mic over to Professor Ramaswamy. Professor Ramaswamy, you're on.
Yeah.
You were able to see all of the slides?
Yeah, initial 2-3 I missed because there was a sudden
Yeah,
break, but still, still I could make what the whole thing is all about. It's quite interesting, nostalgic feeling to take you back to that old times, especially the black and white photographs. It's fantastic, and that has added to the depth of the photos. In fact, Jeffrey, so nice of you to have kept it in the archive and brought it out. I mean, it was a random thing, but quite interesting. Yeah, I would add to that. See, if you look into the geographic, whatever the disposition of these kind of houses, broadly, it is like Travancore, Cochin, and Malabar. If you look at the three regional thing, and when you travel from south towards north, the timber started vanishing. By south, especially up to Chertala, you get a lot of timber houses of Nair Taravads and all. I mean, and Nambudri Illams. And towards Kottayam, again, you have the Christian heritage. But slowly it get transformed from the wooden wall superstructure to masonry. And towards north, more of masonry, especially the laterite. And the roof becomes a little more straightforward. I mean, hipped roof. Whereas all the gimmicks or the best craftsmanship, what you will see only is on the south, Travancore. That is where you get all kind of the carpentry, heights of carpentry, I would say. All the forms that all happens only in that. But that is something which is amazing. That craft, I mean, I have not seen anywhere in the world of this craftsmanship, which I still, we have not yet found out where this particular technology came from. I've seen some in, especially in some Thailand and a little bit in Nepal, but at the heights of the whole thing, we can see it in the Kerala, especially Travancore houses. of Taravads and all this, because that is something amazing. And slowly what happens is this indigenous craft also got a little mixed up with the colonial influence. That's why you see all this parapet get transformed to the balustrades, and then these kind of, the one you have slide, what you're showing, all this is the transformation which happened during the time of the colonial period, where these balustrade columns, the wooden columns replaced by masonries. So that's a transformation which happened, and slowly also the number of floors also went up. Otherwise, it was broadly, it was all single-storied and two-storied, and except for palatial residence, which goes maximum to 2 to 3 floors. I mean, but it's amazing to see some of the craft. And you were talking about some of the lamps of it. And we had actually in the south a place called Manar, which was known for these kind of crafts, especially casting lamps and all, which even today, that also has what you call weakened in terms of its production, because many of the things comes from outside in that, though still a lot of what you call this covering work happens from that particular region near Mavelikar. And Kottayam, yes, more of what you call it's a media in between what you call the hip and these lamps, exactly, yes. And if you look in little more detail, that the form on the left side, what you see is a gindi where they used to keep water. That profile or the perfect shape, that is something amazing. You just tilt a little, the velocity at which the water flows out of it. Even the last droplet of water will come out. That perfection on the product has never happened even today to that extent. It was so perfect, that gindi, and that is normally kept at the entrance of the most of the houses. The people, the carnivals or anybody coming from outside, they wash their feet before entering. So it is a customary thing for the every household to clear off whatever the dirt and then get it. I mean, even older, I would say, earlier times, what they used to do is when they enter the house, they even remove all the clothes, put it for wash, and then take a bath and enter the house. That was a nice custom. I still remember that was happening when the COVID time. Everyone goes out, when they come back, COVID, they remove all the clothes, everything, and then put it in the water. So history repeated at that time during COVID. So our forefathers were more, what do you call, I would say, cautious about the health, because they know that outside a lot of invisible viruses are there. So they made it sure, and they had a healthy living habits, in fact, which we learned during the COVID time, that we need to remove and all this, put it in water, dip it, and then take a bath, enter, and come. All this happened. So that means, I mean, I would still say the forefathers were very, very great, intelligent, and you were also adding at this houses, no, Naligattus. I mean, so many, it's an additive version. Then all these houses had additive quality. So as and when required, they keep on adding when the family increases. So the number of courtyards increased, and then that's how the whole thing happens. So 4 multiple becomes 8 then 16 32, and depends, and that shows the magnanimity of the family, how big the Taravad, and 30, 16 and 32 are all big palatial residences. So that's how, and it's not just merely counted by the number of courtyard, but more than that, because some of these, there may be number of courtyards, some courtyard may be mere for lighting purpose only. It's not actually a courtyard, just for lighting. So you have to really decipher the condition. And this is actually this is the central courtyard with the Tulasi Tara right in the center. And because that is only place, only the god can sit. So that is why they put the sacred Tulasi plant over there. Because that's the Brahmasthala. So they can't have anything else. So only the god's place is there. So that's why the central courtyard will be put with the Tulasi Tara, the most auspicious thing. And every day they pray and water it. And that become a customary thing for the family to do this kind of thing. And it's so nice, especially in the monsoon, to watch when there's a heavy rainfall and sitting around this veranda and see that water sounds, the ripples of the water onto this courtyard, and how nice to see. And this is all what we miss today in the concrete houses. Though we recreate, but still also the fear of the, what you call the thief, they put the courtyard, but completely what you call jailed by bars or pergolas or something. This openness you never get, because from all the side, the valley, gutter valley, bring down the water, and that adds to the beauty of the thing. And you can even imagine rainy time, monsoon time, with the family all together sitting, and maybe a kind of singing session or whatever happening. So nice. That is what we are missing today in our what you call the life, that the joint family system, which had the beauty of bringing the whole oneness together, which I don't know, somehow we lost it. Now it's all nuclear family, cut, divide, and all. And so nobody has time to personal time. Nobody has time for the family. Everyone is working hard, going on, morning on and back by night. No time to spend with the kids. No time to spend with the siblings. So that has, even the kids are not aware about such ancestral houses. Even many of the families they never been taken to them, or they were never taken to their village or to their hometown to show these places. So that's something which I feel we need to revive back to the younger generation, so that at least they are able to see before it vanishes completely. I mean, there is a lot of what you can say, the revival of this thing happening, but in the original form is always the best. And to see how it is, even though we say, because if you look around, and the courtyard space and around is the most living area, because the bedrooms are considered to be only in the night, so that it will be pitch dark mostly. If you look, so people today don't like it because it's dark, but it's meant for only to use daytime. They never used to go and sleep. All the time, the activities, everything happened in and around the courtyard, and also in the Pumugam where the carnival sits. So these inner courtyard areas are basically for the women to actively take part and they interact. And outside near the veranda or the entry Pumugam, that is for the carnival and his friends to sit chat. So that is the men area, and inside mostly the women will be using it widely over there. So that's why this is that nice slide what you have shown. And this is the area where they get natural light, and they used to sit, interact after their busy work in the kitchen. So most of the time women spend working inside only. So it's very quite interesting. And if you look, there's a little more to add, because if you look the lamps you have shown, there are a lot of lamps with the cross on the top. And if you see a lot of church, I think Rakhi was showing some of the church in the top, I mean the talk, which has a flagstaff, Kodimbaram, which is something only Kerala has that. And the reason for that, two things I feel. One is because the guild or the person who were doing also where the Hindu craftsmen were doing. So at those times, it's what you call the gradual transformation happening. So they said, okay, this is also the Kodimaram also came back to add to the thing. They add a cross to the top. So it's interesting, and only in Kerala you see that kind of, especially the Kottayam mid area, you get a lot of variety. So beautiful. And all the churches with fantastic, whatever the Kerala roof style. And it's something amazing. And I think Rakhi missed one thing. There was a nice half church also. You should have shown that. That was a very interesting church, which is still lie in the southernmost end, which they call it as 7.5 church. There's a small church which is 8 feet by 8 feet, which is very near to Takalai and Kanyakumari, which has been approaching. So that shows how nicely the craftsmen. So if you travel from Kanyakumari to Gokarnam or whatever, Mangalore, I mean, it's a nice, beautiful journey which takes you around through this. I mean, this, in fact, Jeffrey's talk has inspired me, because at some point of time, I don't know whether I've shown to Rakhi students or not, I did a journey from along the coast from Kanyakumari to Kasargod. It was KK. I may call it as a KK. So we did just, I mean, it was interesting to do something called the coastal heritage. I was just only doing a coastal heritage documentation, just like that, a visual documentation. And so sometimes I can actually do that also. It was very interesting to see the structures all along the coast, how it varied and how it varied in terms of its form, in terms of its use, in terms of the appearance. So nice from one end to the other end by the time you reach. So this actually, your talk, this reminds me of that journey. In fact, it's so nice of you that you have a fantastic black and white this thing, and it's a very nice for the Janal to have this archive with you. And is he going to present the houses also? Some of the houses? No.
We'll be setting up digital exhibitions of the houses.
Okay, yeah, because I remember Aditi was telling about some houses of Kumaranashan and all. It's quite interesting.
Yes.
Very Thomakal, your house of the Kumaranashan. Very. I mean, that it's still kept as a museum. And in fact, last night there was a huge, I mean, a long conversation happened between the grandson of the Kumaran. I was just talking to him about that Jeffrey was visited the Thomakal house, and he was quite excited to know, is it? And And in fact, he shared a photograph of the entire family with Ashan's wife and sons, both the elder sons, two sons, and then the second two daughters and the grandson, the siblings. So maybe sometimes I will share with Aditi that it's a very interesting black and white photograph,
Lovely.
beautifully done. Lovely to share that thing with you.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll ask him to join during that time. Your exhibition, I will ask him to come over to that exhibition when it's happening.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I will ask. Thank you so much, Robin, for a nice what you call travel through the historic whatever the old 1967 thing. I mean, I think many. I was born. I was 4 years old, no doubt about it. But I think Rakhi and all will be very. But it's interesting, very, very, very interesting. Nice to see. And there's huge furniture lot. I mean, this gives a lot of scope for it because there is something else on the furniture also to be explored on the Kerala. That is something another area. I mean, Aditi, maybe later we will talk on that. No
Yeah,
problem.
future talks, future
Sure. Yeah,
talks.
sure.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Robin, for the wonderful
Thank you.
talk.
Thank you,
Thank you
Professor
very much for
Ramaswamy. Thank you.
participating.
Robin's Gindi is full, so to speak, of nostalgic memories now. Yeah, there's a lot on Kumaranathan's family also. Portraits are there. We will open those up gradually as we go along this series. Sharat, over to you.
Yes, Robin, thank you for sharing these images with Kerala Museum. Um, now that Ramaswamy sir has mentioned Kumaranashan's house, in the last presentation, when you had shown that model of Rose Court Bungalow, I had sent that image to few descendants of C.V. Raman Pillai who still live there, and they were delighted, and they told me several details about the man who made that model. His name Sridharan Nair. He is the one who made that model. He was a great grandson of C.V. Raman Pillai. And they, in fact, sent me two other photographs of the occupants of the house when you went there. You took their photographs. There are two photographs still framed and on the walls of C.V. Raman Pillai's bungalow, which maybe I can share it with Aditi
Yes.
sometime later. Yeah, it was wonderful. And I also managed to get in touch with the members of Ilankam Vida. And one of the members in the photograph that you had shown in the previous presentation, there was uh, a Marakkal. That is how we call it. Marakkal is a paddy measuring unit. Because I had a vague memory of seeing the same Marakkal when I went to the house a couple of years back. So I asked her whether it is the same Marakkal that is still maintained in the house. She said, yes, it is still there. And I think, we'll start with that wonderful image of a Nilavilaka, the lamp, because that is something special. Because when you go to Kerala households, like Ramaswamy sir was saying, there are different kinds of lamps. And if you go to a Christian household, you will see a lamp with a cross on top. But this is a special, not this one, the Nilavilaka. Yes, this is a very special lamp because this is a Kathakali Atta Vilaka. So this lamp would not be there in all the Hindu households. Now, Ilankam was one of the prominent Nair households from Najinad, it being the residence of Diwan Nanu Pillai, who was the Diwan of Travancore during last quarter of 19th century. And even then, the family had been in existence uh, much before the time of Nanu Pillai. I think the structure that we saw, the photograph, the first photograph, that was a very interesting photograph. Can we go to that first photograph? Yes. This is Ilangat house, and unfortunately the house is in ruins now, and as I mentioned earlier, they are trying to reconstruct the house, and this being one of the prominent houses in Nanjinad, it is not uncommon that they were great patrons of Kathakali, and that is why they have that Kathakali Attavilakku. And regarding this particular typology, I would like to add to what Ramaswamy sir had elaborated on all the residential typologies that you find across Kerala when you travel from Kanyakumari to northern parts of Kerala. But this is a very unique agrarian typology, and the vernacular term for these houses are Arapura Vidugal. So Arapura is just a pura, or a space, or a box kind of a space where you store paddy. So all these are agrarian households, and these houses, unlike the houses that we see today on the main roadside, and all these houses were located um, among sprawling paddy farmlands, and all the activities there revolved around the agrarian things. This photograph is very interesting because you see a gable, that is the eastern gable, and right in front of it there is a long rectangular structure, and you see a boy standing in front of that structure. That structure is very unusual. It is not found in all the Nair households, and that structure indicates the prominence of the family, because you need to have special permission from the royals to construct that structure. That was known as the Valiya Padipura. And that is where the patriarch of the house would um, hold meetings with the elders in the village, and important decisions regarding the conduct of festivals and everything will be, all those meetings will be held in that particular space. And it is in that particular space that you had taken a photograph of the patriarch's seat. That photograph is also included in the presentation. It's a beautifully carved bench. There is a name for that. Usually it is known as Udambara. That is the vernacular term. Udamba means body. And in some cases, in this case, it is just a plank, but usually it is a box. So Ara can be equated with a box. Udamba means body. So it is basically a box on top of which you can rest, lay down. Okay. So it is also used for storage purposes. In some cases, the important valuables would be kept there, or mostly paddy would be stocked inside these boxes. Now, the bench kind of seat that you had shown, yes, yes, this is the seat of the gardener. In the previous presentation, Robin had included beautiful photographs of this bench, which is there in Talakkulathu Valliya Veedu, that is Veluthambi Dalava's residence. And one very important thing regarding these seats is that since this is a place where many people, not only your relatives, but people from nearby villages maybe, and prominent patriarchs of your village would assemble there. So the members of the family who were very particular in decorating these spaces. That is why you see this splendid craftsmanship. In fact, if you look at the details in Veluthambi Dalava's house, that is Talakkulathu Valliya Veedu, you will see a carving of the Dalava, that is Veluthambi, on a galloping horse. That detail is carved on one of the legs of the seat. Now that is wonderful, because many people who discuss the history of these houses say that these are like 300 to 400 years old. But the structure that we see today, now the structure that we see in this photograph is most probably late 18th century or early 19th century construction, because this is timber, and due to the monsoon and humidity that we have here, timber tends to decay. And many of these structures would require periodic maintenance. So it was very common that certain elements would be replaced with new ones. So the site on which the house stands and the family temple will also be there. It will be a sacred site, and it would be occupied by the family for maybe 500 to 600 years. So the house is not that old. And most of these houses that we see today, especially in southern part of Kerala and in Kanyakumari district, have been reconstructed during early 19th century. And regarding Veluthambi's house, it is very interesting that people often say that that is the house that was constructed by Veluthambi. And Robin, who has studied the history and the matrilineal connections, would be very much familiar with what happened to Veluthambi. And he had a very tragic end. And after he died, his house was demolished on royal command. The Maharaja of Travancore ordered for the demolition of the house, and a pond was dug in its place. That is how you would punish those who went against the royals. So the house that we see today was therefore constructed only during early 19th century. So that is very, very interesting. And another thing I wanted to add was regarding the courtyard. Ramaswamy sir has rightly pointed out that that is the Brahmasthala or Brahmasthana. So generally when we design these houses, the site would be cleared, and Stapati or an architect would be called in, and a plan of the house would be made. It is unlike how we do it today. Today we draw the plan, but in olden times they had all these measurements written down, and the Stapati would then supervise the work. But those who have studied these Kerala houses will know that we will never see a circular courtyard. If you go to any of these old houses, we will never see a circular courtyard. We will mostly see rectangular courtyards. Now that is because circle being the perfect shape is always reserved for the gods. So that that particular point being the Brahmasthana, that is the point where God resides or Brahman resides. So you can't stay there. That is why it is left as a void, and you generally have a Tulasi Tara with a Tulasi plant on the Brahmasthana. But when it comes to the temple, temple is the house of God. God resides there. So there is no problem in placing or consecrating the idol of the god right at the Brahmasthana. So therefore, we have circular shrines in Kerala. So for a god, God can take circular plan for his shrine, but mere mortals cannot go for perfect shapes like that. The next perfect shape being square. Square was opted by the Kshatriyas, and you will see square courtyards being used in aristocratic homes, and even in Nambudri homes, you will see square courtyards. But usually, if you look at these houses in southern part of Kerala, it is the rectangular courtyard that you generally see. And the design of these spaces and how it was envisioned and how the construction process would start is also very interesting, because in some cases, before constructing the house, a well would be dug in the Brahmasthana, so that when the house is constructed, you have it is not covered with a roof. The rainwater will come in, and you will have drains, and these drains would be connected to the ponds that you have in the vast estate. So the water will drain out to these ponds. But in some houses, you have a well right at the Brahmasthana, and stone blocks would be laid on top, and there will be this gap, and through this gap, the water in the courtyard will seep down to the well. So it will directly connect to the water table. So that is something that is generally seen in these houses in southern part of Kerala, especially in Kanyakumari district. And I would also share interesting detail I saw while visiting um, one of these old houses, that is the house of Raja Keshavdas, who was a prominent prime minister during 18th century, late 18th century, Travancore. And when I went to the house, that house was built by the Diwan for his mother. The name of the house is Kravalagathu Puttan Veeda. And I noticed that there were some huge, very old, huge trees not far from the core structure. And when I sat down discussing the history of the house and regarding details of its construction, the patriarch there shared this very interesting snippet. He told me that there was a tradition in olden times that when a house was being constructed, the Stapati would clear the site and do necessary things and oversee the construction of the house. But then at the same time, on the four corners of the plot, four trees, saplings would be planted. And now you generally see trees like peral, which would live for maybe hundreds of years. So these trees would be planted on the four corners of the site. And uh, as the family grows, the tree would also grow. And the idea is that a tree grows above the ground, but the roots go below the ground. And from the four corners, the roots of these four trees would connect, and it will hold this site. So it's a very, very beautiful concept, I think, because you have this lush green cover on four sides. And when you think of it, the trees are protecting your estate, not from above the ground, from even below the ground. And finally, one small detail, just because I had these coins with me, this is the coin, the kind of coin that was so you need a counting board for counting this. Yeah, this is the coin board. Now this is a silver coin from early 19th century. This is a Velli Chakra. So it's very difficult to count these coins if you go one by one. So you need such beautifully crafted coin boards if you have like 100 coins or a 200 coins. So yes, thank you.
Wonderful, Sharat. Thank you so much for that. Those were lovely offshoots of this whole idea of only built heritage that comes through from two-dimensional photographs. And we are hoping actually with these two lectures, we're only barely scratching the surface really, and we're hoping to get into all of this, the social structures around the Taravad that you've touched upon just now, through the iconography and the woodwork and all of that around it. Thank you so much for that. Rakhi, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Jeffrey, for presenting that wonderful collection. So it's very evident from the series that architecture is a social construct. Every building in Professor Jeffrey's presentation is a product of its time, place, and people. So if we travel from the backwaters, midlands, highland, spice estates, paddy fields, forests, and the urban rush, rarely do we come across two houses bearing similar designs in Kerala. Throughout history, we see a lot of events happening along the Kerala coast. Communism has thrived here, as has deep religiosity. The land and the people stand out for a willingness to receive with open arms any new culture, idea, or race that ever came here. So it was natural that for a state which loved treating its guests as God, that the abodes its people built to welcome them should also feel holy. So there was always an intent to, make every man-made object compliant with nature and its geography. And thus traditional elements slowly carved their own space amidst modern ideas, from the gated Padipura into the airy Pumukham. The priority then and now is to make someone new feel at home. Simplicity of the designs only help further. So I would say that the grandeur in the ostentatious sense has found an alternative in calm aesthetics, plain and pleasing to the eye in Kerala. So which to a Malayali is the surest sign of luxury. So the other day, Aditi and myself, we had visited the Tarakan homestead in Erupunna. And the intricate detailing of the doors and the frames were outstanding. Very fine, simple aesthetics. And that is what luxury is for a Malayali. Residential structures, even those seemingly palatial, are built with a multi-purpose role in mind, putting to good use nature's bounties. So much of this respect for nature in one's home owes its origins to the ancient science of Vastu Shastra here, upon which Kerala architecture is primarily based. By harvesting nature, Vastu had long been restricted to temple architecture and provided an option to combine the five elements of nature. And today in residential quarters as well. Over time, it got into residential quarters. So the fundamental laws governing Vastu made perfect sense. So transcending religious beliefs, and it found acceptance amongst the Christians and the Muslims of the region. And we find Vastu Shastra based structures across all communities in Kerala. Now, if we study the house forms as objects of the society, we know that the most basic form of a Kerala house is the Nalukettu, a four-block structure with an open courtyard in the center, four roof, thatched or tiled, and it descends in a manner allowing rain, water, and sunlight to fall into a sunken area below. And the Nalukettu, as Professor Ramaswamy was saying, can be extended into an Ettukettu or a Padinarukettu and so on. And the location of the rooms around it is also governed by the Vastu rules. So this house form was common to most of the elite classes, while the working classes opted for the single or the double block structures. But an emotionally uniting factor was the requirement for an independent plot of land for every household in Kerala. So unlike people elsewhere, the Malayalis are known to wish for adequate surrounding space. Like what we saw in Professor Jeffrey's pictures of the houses with a large land around each of the homestead. So this attribute comes through in their preference for residential structures with front and rear courtyard areas. And wanting to be self-sufficient, wells were dug in almost every house to ensure a steady supply of water even during the summers. And always the preferred flooring in the past was dried mud, printed tiles, with later introductions including colored oxide and mosaic. And when it came to interior structures, timber was to people of this region what marble was to the Mughals. So hardwood, especially teak and mahogany, continue to be preferred source of building material. And the very sight of wooden furniture, doors and interiors and frameworks is considered as a matter of social privilege, even today, a social prestige. And today, if we look, Kerala is divided into 14 districts, but it spans three culturally different landscapes. So it has this Malabar, Cochin, and Travancore. And regional profile of mostly the Cochin and Travancore is characterized by three distinct landscapes: the Eastern Highlands, the Central Midlands, the Western Lowlands. And surprisingly, the houses found here have independent identities in tune with this very diversity. So for example, if we go to the cool climate of the Eastern Highlands was a major draw for the Europeans who came here, who found it ideal for introducing plantation crops. And they built their colonial estate bungalows overlooking the fields of the rubber and the tea estates there. Even though the ownership have passed to the Indians, but the typology is still maintained. We see open front porches, exterior character, very unique in those areas. And today it's seen in the Christian highland belts of Vagaman, Kuttikanam, Kanyakumari, Pala, etc. And when we go to the plains of Trivandrum, the state capital, was home to the several palaces of the Travancore royal family. built in the traditional style. There were grand structures like how Professor Sharat was talking about, housing members of the Travancore royal family. And the kings patronized art and culture and was also influenced by the invading foreigners. We see those additions in the buildings. So there are influences from the West here as well. And then if we go to Kuttanad, the farmhouses of Kuttanad, where the houses take a more uniform face. And this being the only place apart from Netherlands where farming is practiced below sea level. And the houses here follow a classic Kerala architecture with little foreign inclusions. But the socio-economic sense closing this place is noticeable in its residential structures, most of which have been built for utility with several indoor and outdoor spaces for keeping the harvested paddy crop. So the core was always a rectangular granary called the arra, made of the hardwood. And with all the blocks built around it, the people sleeps around it. The rooms are spread around the central granary. So the objective was to protect the granary. And similarly, we had many outside influences owing to the presence of spices, especially pepper here. We had the Portuguese coming in, and we can see the Portuguese villas in Fort Cochin, Tangasheri, Alapi. We had the Arab influences in the Muslim or the Mapala households, Dutch buildings, the British bungalows. And then we also have other Indian community influences, the Tamil Brahmins, the Kachi Memons, Banyans, Konganis, all of them bringing their customs and practices into the material culture of Kerala. And I can also say that feudalism was a mainstay in several regions, and we see the varieties and typologies of the social hierarchy. So here we see the Mana, or the home of the priestly Nambudiri Brahmins holding a strong socio-economic position. And we see the Kovilagams of the local chieftains with temples inside. And then we see the migrant community like the Tamil Brahmin Agraharams, different kind of housing typologies of the different communities. And we also saw the celebratory boat of the Mariam church in Professor Jeffrey's photographs from a church which was directly connected to the waterways. And we have many such churches with objects and artifacts connected to waterways. There is this church in Kadavur in Kollam, where the church procession happens in the backwaters of Ashtamudi, even today. Because historically, Kerala had a water transportation system connecting estuarine systems, backwaters, riverine systems, man-made canals, natural canals, and all these together connected the households, markets, and religious structures. So all this is reflected in objects like the boat, the celebratory boat of the church, and other such symbolisms. So thus, every object and building is a product of its time, place, and people, what we saw in Professor Jeffrey's slides. And as social structures change, house typologies in Kerala has also evolved. Many traditional homes have disappeared, or it has been divided after the land reforms, cultural shifts, and the breakup of joint family systems. And now these homesteads are taking on new meanings as modern activities blend with traditional spaces. Families are moving to modern villas and apartments. And because of this, architects like us are taking on projects like the adaptive reuse of heritage houses, turning them into resorts, storage facilities, sometimes even museums. So at this point, I think we should make an effort to document and list these homestead typologies and objects and create a toolkit to manage these properties, to create awareness and establish the identities of these homesteads and objects. So that's it from my end. Thank you, Professor Jeffrey, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakhi. Thank you so much. Yes, as usual, your talk, your 10 minutes was as though scripted. And the last time I knew that you prepared for it, but this time we barely gave you enough time to prepare. But every sentence is strung so beautifully together to pitch this people, places, and the product of the environment that the object has been made in. So much for us to look at. If we have any questions coming in from the audience, there's one on Omani.
Can I ask someone something?
Yes, you can.
Hi, Robin. Vijayan here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Robin. I didn't see any picture of a house with a thatched roof. I thought you had some of those.
In the collection there are, yes. In fact, the presentation last week included a couple like that.
Okay.
For one, it included the Ashan's house in Tonakil.
Yeah, the old ones you took or the recent ones? What the ones you
but
took in
also
the...
a couple of dwellings that we had chanced on the road, which were
Okay.
they were made of coconut, only of coconut matting. The whole
Right.
product, the whole house was made of
Yeah.
the products of the coconut palm. But
Mhm.
I didn't use them tonight because we'd given them a run last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one more question. You didn't say this, but the gentleman who spoke after you suggested that people use the kindi to wash their feet and then they discarded their old clothes before entering a home. And that was to make sure that they didn't carry an infection into the house. Was it actually an infection or ritual pollution that he was trying to avoid?
Both. See, earlier times, what they do is the
No,
only
I
way.
would like Robin to answer that question, sir.
Okay, okay.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. I'm very glad to have your intervention, Professor Ramaswamy. I think in traditional times it was probably more about ritual pollution, that you'd been out in the streets acquiring
Oh,
something intangible but very processable, very much something you could take to heart because
yeah.
you'd grown up with it.
I wonder if in the 19th century or before that, they had any idea of bacteria or viruses in Kerala or anywhere in India.
I'm not sure that has Kerala claimed to have invented antibiotic?
Yeah, we have all kinds of claims, but you're a historian.
Yes. So we haven't got into the social practices of old Kerala, but that's definitely for another day. Though
Yeah.
I was going through some of my material on the Taravad and the breakup of Maramakatayam, and there's some wonderful things. I came across a intervention that Sir M. Krishan Nair of the Palgat Victoria College Gate, a speech he made in the Madras Legislative Council in 1929, when they were debating how best to dismantle Maramakatayam legally. And the speech recalls when he was practicing Vakil in Calicut in the 1890s. He knew a family that had 400 members, not all of them living in the same house, but 30 and 40 per house. So they had 10 properties around Kozhikode district with sufficiently large dwellings to house 30 and 40 people. But at the end of it all, legally, the only person who could sign off property was the Carnavan of the whole collective of 300 and 400 people. So terribly, it was a lawyer's picnic, as they say, in the 1880s, 90s, until about 1940, I think, when it came to property rights in Maramakatayam families. But that's a kind of byproduct of what we've been talking about tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much.
We have another question from Mallory. She's actually been wanting to know more about your collection for a while, Robin. So hopefully after this talk, we can get into it in detail. She says, thank you for the very nice discussion and materials. I was not at the last talk, so I'm sorry if this was already discussed, but I am curious about if any of the material shows kitchens, kitchen spaces, or culinary vessels and tools. Robin, either you can take this, or Rachel, maybe you can also answer this one.
I admire the tools that we saw very much, the huge mortars and pestles and so on, but I don't know nearly enough. I was also looking today at an interview I did in '83 with the lady who was the first Indian woman to be principal of St. Teresa's College in Cochin, and that was Ambad Kartiani Amma. She talked about, in the interview, she talked about the way in which in her Taravad in about 1900, she was born in 1896, there were no servants. The women of the Taravad did the cooking, and she said in huge brass vessels of the kind I guess we would now see in a good vegetarian restaurant if they still had the old utensils, but a huge vessels that were enough to cook meals to cater for 30 or 40 people regularly. But I'd like to know more about where these vessels came from, who made them, and whether they changed over time. Well, I'm sure they did change over time, but when and what replaced the old, I think, brass vessels?
Robin, can I just 1 minute, a small question? This is actually on behalf of Mallory, because I was trying to get hold of a picture of EMS standing in a queue at a ration shop in Trivandrum in 1968. And on the net, I couldn't find one. Would you have one in your collection? The one that you sent to CDS?
I wish I did, but it sounds the sort of thing that Sharat would be on top of. Sharat,
Okay.
you were having interesting experiences with people bringing you old albums, I think, with photographs, and presumably too, the Hindu photograph archives would have that kind of photograph if it in fact exists.
Because lots of people seem to remember it, but there is not a single photograph to be found.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I actually asked the Hindu to search this about 3
Yeah.
times, and they say they don't have it.
Oh,
I don't
But I
have it.
might just not have good enough
Did
connection.
you offer them some money
They wanted me to pay like 6,000 rupees
for
just to
one
search
photograph?
it.
Just to search. Oh, okay.
Okay, so these discussions we can leave for email and follow-ups. Let's share what we have on the screen right now is Rachel sharing our next talk, which will be looking at kitchens and spaces in the Taravad. Any other questions on the photographs
very appropriate.
Yeah. Yes. Can you see that, Robin?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
It looks marvelous. Yeah.
We have one other question on Omani's architecture, which I don't know who can take today, but maybe for another day, but I'll still read it out here. While visiting Zanzibar, I happened to see the woodwork on the doors similar to the ones in Kerala in older times. Zanzibar was once a part of Oman and was also a major trading hub between India and other countries. And what I want to ask is there Omani's influence in woodwork on architecture in Kerala? Thank you, Matthew. Yeah.
Always there's a cross-cultural thing happening because of the trade. I mean, that's a founder base of the thing. If you look Portuguese, I mean, that maybe after this kitchen, we can elaborate on that. Even our food, even many of the etymological origin of our terminologies all came from Portuguese, from Dutch. So many things are there. So no wonder there's always a cross-cultural relation because of the trade. And people from other side come over and see, and from this guild also go over there. And this is happening not only in Kerala, even in Tamil Nadu, and even cross it is there. If you look, for that matter, if you look the Tanjavur temple, especially on the north side, there is a beautiful image right on the Vimana of a Napoleon Bonaparte person with the hat on that. Can you imagine a temple built in the 9th century had a beautiful sculpture? So that doesn't mean that sculptor had seen somebody of that nature in the premises or somewhere during the trading. So that made him to sculpt it over there. So a lot of such things are there in Indian history and a cross-cultural relation. I think so it can be elaborated so much in detail, because if you look, maybe another time we can get into this cross-cultural aspects of architecture of Kerala. That is also one which we can look into. How this influence the other colonial and other kind of culture influence this.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Robin, want to add anything? Or Rakhi, were you going to add something to that?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Were you going to add something to that?
No, not particularly, although I was thinking of 2 young scholars I know who are working on a little bit like Felipe Osella on the boat people. And when I say boat people, I don't mean coastal fishermen particularly. I mean the Trans-Arabian Sea boat people. And it's the kind of topic that they would probably be able to cast a little bit of light on. And if you wanted to pursue it, we could perhaps approach them. I think they're both based in India.
Yeah. Okay, so Rachel's been adding information about the next talk in the chat box. Please do make note of the date and the time and join us. This one's in person, but will also be live broadcast on our YouTube channel, by which time these two Zoom recordings will also be up on the YouTube channel. And we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you, Robin.
Yeah,
My
thank
camera
you.
is not working, which is probably a good thing.
That's unidentified. Yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping to have a good recording of this session so that we can put it up on our YouTube channel. So yeah,
And thank you to
Professor
Kerala Museum
Ramaswamy,
too.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Ramaswamy. Thank you for joining in. Thank you, Sharat. Thank you, Rakhi. Thank you, all of you, for coming today. On behalf of the museum and Geojit Foundation, we'd like to thank Professor Robin Jeffrey, who has made this generous contribution towards the archive, but also spent so much time with us really to understand how these photos were taken, everything from anecdotal stories to what he was kind of gathering as evidence towards his future research. All of that we went into over several sessions, and he's really given a lot of time to the team to understand how we put these together even as collections. And you know that as archive collections, these become large groupings, and it's hard to kind of give detail annotated for each photograph, but Robin's already done that. He's given a small tiny note against each photograph, so that really helps future researchers to work with this material. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next talk, Household Objects and Spaces in Memory, Anchoring the Taravad in Jeffrey's Photographs, by Latika George. She's written this book also called Suryani Kitchen, which some of you may have read already. Yeah. So the talk is on Saturday, 20th of September at the Kerala Museum in Kochi and live on YouTube. Thank you all so much. We'll be in touch with all of you to also hear your feedback about the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rakhi, and thank you, Robin.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, panelists. I greatly enjoyed meeting you. I hope we can email perhaps.
Yes, connect
I'd like
over
to keep
email.
in touch.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you,
everybody. So good night to Robin, because it's late at night there, and for us it's a good evening to you all. Yeah.
Will you be putting it up in the YouTube?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it'll be up on YouTube before the next talk.
No, I couldn't join it in time.
Yeah, no worries. It'll be up. It'll be up on YouTube in a few days.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I see Mallory. Mallory, nice to see you there.
Yeah. Mallory, we'll follow up on email, and we'll spend some time with you to sit down and look over the entire collection on kitchen related things. There's not too many, but there's maybe enough for you to see.
Yeah, and I'll be there in person also very soon, next week.
Oh, lovely. That would
I
be
will.
Nice to know that, Mallory, we can meet.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Thank you,
I'll
everyone.
reach out to you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for
Okay.
joining.
Bye.
Bye.